The Grand Summit Resort lobby blazed with chandelier light, each crystal throwing diamonds across marble that cost more per square foot than most people earned in a month. Through the revolving doors stepped Hiroshi Yamaha, 72 years old, shoulders slightly bent, wearing a gray wool jacket that had seen better decades. His worn leather suitcase rolled behind him with a wheel that squeaked. Every head turned toward him, then away, as if synchronized. The dismissal was instant, collective, brutal. He joined the line at reception, clutching a crumpled confirmation printout. Before he'd taken 3 breaths, a group in designer ski gear cut ahead. A bellhop sprinted past him toward a woman dripping in jewelry. Staff glanced at him like he was a smudge on their expensive view. When he finally reached the desk, the clerk looked him over with a smile that never reached her eyes and said the resort was fully booked. Perhaps he'd be more comfortable at the budget motel downhill. The manager's voice boomed across the lobby. "Sir, we are full. Don't make a scene." Betrayed by family, seeking only peace, Hiroshi felt the familiar sting of being invisible. Then, from the café, a young woman with kind eyes paused, listening. She'd heard the Japanese words he'd muttered under his breath. She stepped forward. Everything was about to change. "Wait, before we continue, let me ask you something. Would you have walked past Hiroshi like everyone else did? Or would you have been the one to step forward? If you're the kind of person who believes kindness still matters in this cold world, then prove it right now. Hit that subscribe button. Because if you can't take 2 seconds to support stories that restore your faith in humanity, how can you say you'd help someone in need? Subscribe now. Let's see if you're really different from the people who ignored him. Thank you. Let's get back to the story. Hiroshi had entered the Grand Summit Resort 23 minutes ago. He knew because he'd checked his watch 4 times, each glance a small act of grounding himself against the rising tide of humiliation. The lobby stretched before him like a temple to excess, floors so polished they reflected the chandeliers above. Leather furniture arranged in conversation clusters that whispered exclusivity. Floor-to-ceiling windows framing the Aspen Mountains like they'd been purchased specifically for this view. Everywhere, staff moved with practiced elegance, but their attention was a spotlight that never landed on him. A couple in matching Moncler jackets received a chorus of greetings. 3 men in golf attire, loud with the confidence of generational wealth, laughed as they passed him, one muttering something about lost tourists, just loud enough to be heard. A bellhop actually swerved around Hiroshi to reach a silver-haired woman with a small dog in her purse. The line had been 6 people when he arrived. It was now 2, but Hiroshi remained in the same position because each time he neared the front, someone new would arrive and be waved forward. The pattern was so consistent it felt choreographed. Finally, he reached the counter. Rachel Hale, nameplate gleaming, looked at him the way someone might examine an unexpected stain. Her makeup was flawless, her smile a weapon of exclusion. "Can I help you?" The words were correct, but her tone suggested the opposite. "I have reservation," Hiroshi said carefully, his accent thick despite decades in English. "Yamaha. Hiroshi Yamaha." She typed with 2 fingers, her nails clicking. The frown appeared instantly. "I don't see anything under that name. Are you certain you booked with us?" "Yes, 3 weeks ago. Confirmation number." He reached for his pocket, fumbling. "Sir," Rachel's voice sharpened, "this is a premium resort. Our rooms start at $800 per night. Perhaps there's been some confusion." Behind him, someone sighed impatiently. Hiroshi felt heat crawl up his neck. "No confusion. I have." "Rachel, what's the hold-up?" Derek Morrison, the general manager, strode over with the kind of authority that came from years of wielding it over people who couldn't fight back. He assessed Hiroshi in 2 seconds. The worn jacket, the scuffed suitcase, the age-spotted hands still searching pockets for a confirmation he couldn't find. "Sir, I'm going to be direct with you." Derek's voice carried deliberately, turning heads. "This establishment caters to a very particular clientele. There's a quality in about 15 miles down the mountain that would be much more appropriate for your budget. We don't want you to feel uncomfortable here." The words landed like stones. Around them, conversations paused. Wealthy guests watched with a casual interest as spectators at someone else's misfortune. Staff members glanced over, then away, embarrassed but silent. Hiroshi's chest tightened. 3 weeks ago, his nephew, blood of his blood, had engineered a boardroom coup so elegant it was almost beautiful. $52 billion, 43 years of building, gone in a conference call. He'd fled to America seeking anonymity, seeking to remember what it felt like to be human rather than an empire. But he hadn't expected this. Not to be erased so completely that even basic dignity was denied. "I have reservation," he repeated, but his voice had lost its strength. It came out small, defeated, the voice of someone who'd already lost. "Sir, please step aside." Derek gestured to the side of the lobby. "You're holding up the line." Hiroshi's hands shook as he grabbed his suitcase handle. Around him, the resort hummed with expensive indifference. This was his company's property, built on principles he'd written himself: dignity, respect, excellence, and service. Those words were probably framed somewhere in Derek's office. They meant nothing now. He turned to leave, each step heavier than the last. The corner near the café was quieter, tucked behind a marble column and a cluster of ferns and pots that probably cost more than his jacket. Hiroshi sank into a leather chair that sighed beneath his weight and stared at his hands. They were old hands now, mapped with veins and age spots, trembling slightly from fatigue and something deeper. He pulled out the small notebook he always carried, the one his wife had given him 40 years ago, before cancer took her. The pages were filled with haiku, fragments of thoughts, sketches of moments worth remembering. He wrote slowly, in Japanese characters that felt like home. "Ignored in the snow, wealth means nothing to the blind. Kindness stands alone." Around him, the resort continued its performance. A family swept past speaking French, trailed by staff carrying shopping bags. A businessman barked into his phone about market positions and quarterly projections. The cafe hummed with the sound of espresso machines and polite laughter. No one looked at the old man in the corner. He'd become furniture. Hiroshi's mind drifted back 3 weeks. The conference room in Tokyo, mahogany table reflecting fluorescent lights. His nephew Akira's face, so earnest as he'd presented the restructuring proposal. The board members who wouldn't meet Hiroshi's eyes. The votes that came swift and final. Akira had been patient, spending 5 years positioning pieces on a board Hiroshi hadn't known they were playing on. By the time Hiroshi understood, it was over. "You built something magnificent, uncle," Akira had said afterward, private and almost kind. "But the world has changed. We need younger leadership now. You understand." Hiroshi had understood. Understood that trust was a weakness. Understood that the values he'd built his empire on, respect, loyalty, humanity, were quaint relics in a world that moved too fast for sentiment. He watched a bellhop rush past, chasing after a guest who'd dropped a glove. The same bellhop who'd walked past Hiroshi's suitcase 3 times without glancing down. The pattern was everywhere once you learned to see it. The staff weren't cruel, not exactly. They were practical. They invested their attention where it would yield returns. An old man in a worn jacket offered no returns. Hiroshi closed his notebook. Maybe Akira was right. Maybe he didn't belong in this world anymore. Maybe. Suma Mason. The words stopped his breath. excuse me, in Japanese, spoken with perfect Tokyo pronunciation. Hiroshi's head snapped up. A young woman stood 3 feet away, wearing a café uniform. Her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She looked exhausted, the kind of bone-deep tired that came from too many double shifts and too little hope. But her eyes were kind, and they were looking directly at him. She bowed slightly, a gesture so unexpected in this American resort that Hiroshi felt something crack in his chest. "Sir, may I help you?" she continued in Japanese, her fluency flawless. For a moment, Hiroshi couldn't speak, couldn't process that someone was addressing him in his own language, with respect, with the formal registers his mother had taught him 70 years ago. "You speak Japanese?" he finally managed, his voice rough. She smiled, and it was nothing like Rachel's professional mask or Derek's dismissive smirk. It reached her eyes, warm and genuine. "Yes, sir. I lived in Tokyo for several years." I couldn't help but notice what happened at the front desk. "I'm very sorry you were treated that way. You saw." Hiroshi felt shame wash over him again. "I saw someone being treated with disrespect they didn't deserve." She switched to English, perhaps noticing the guests passing by. "My name is Lilygate. I work in the cafe, but I'd like to help if you'll let me." "Do you really have a reservation?" "Yes," Hiroshi said, gratitude making his throat tight. "But I cannot find confirmation. My situation is complicated." Lily nodded, understanding in her expression. "Let me look into it. Sometimes bookings get filed under different names or confirmation numbers. May I ask you to wait here just a moment?" She didn't wait for permission. She was already moving toward the front desk with quiet determination, and Hiroshi watched her go, this young woman in a cafe uniform, about to challenge a manager who'd already made his judgment clear. Something stirred in Hiroshi's chest. Something he thought Akira had killed 3 weeks ago in that Tokyo conference room. Hope. Lily reached the reception desk where Rachel was helping a couple decide between Mountain View and Valley View suites. Her voice honey-sweet with commission calculations. Derek stood nearby, reviewing something on a tablet, his posture radiating territorial authority. "Excuse me, Rachel," Lily said, her voice polite but firm. "I need to check on a reservation. The gentleman over there has a confirmation, but there seems to be some confusion with the booking." Rachel glanced up, irritation flashing across her perfect features. "Lily, you work in the cafe. This isn't your department." "I know, but I speak Japanese, and I think I can help resolve this quickly." Lily didn't move from her position. "It'll just take a moment." Derek's head lifted from his tablet. "Miss Gate, we appreciate your initiative, but we have protocols." The gentleman was already informed. "That there was no reservation," Lily interrupted gently. "But I don't think anyone actually looked properly. He said his assistant made the booking, possibly under a different name for privacy. That's not uncommon with international travelers." The lobby had quieted slightly. Guests sensing confrontation the way sharks sense blood. Derek's jaw tightened. "Miss Gate, I'll remind you that I'm the general manager. And I remind you that our job is to help guests, not turn them away because of how they're dressed." Lily's voice remained calm, but steel ran through it now. "May I please check the reservation system? If there's truly nothing, it'll take 30 seconds to confirm." For a moment, Derek looked ready to refuse. Then he glanced around at the watching faces, calculating the optics of refusing a simple computer check. "Fine. Make it quick." Lily stepped behind the desk, and Rachel moved aside with obvious reluctance. Hiroshi watched from his corner, his heart hammering. This young woman was risking her job for him, a stranger who probably looked like every other old man who wandered into places he couldn't afford. Lily's fingers moved across the keyboard, her expression focused. "Can you remember anything specific about the booking?" she called out to Hiroshi in Japanese. He stood, moving closer. My assistant is Yuki Tanaka. She might have used her name, or possibly Sato, my pen name I sometimes use. Lily typed, paused, typed again. 10 seconds. 20. The lobby held its breath. Then her face changed. Her eyes widened slightly, and she leaned closer to the screen as if to confirm what she was seeing. When she looked up at Derek, her voice had gone very quiet. I found it. Imperial Suite. 14 nights, starting today. Booked under the name Sato, with full prepayment 3 weeks ago. Derek's face drained of color. Imperial Suite? The top floor suite, Lily confirmed. The one we reserve for VIP guests. She turned to Hiroshi, switching back to Japanese. I'm so sorry for the confusion, Mr. Sato. Your room is ready. Would you like me to prepare your key cards? Rachel had gone pale. Around them, guests whispered. Derek's tablet hung forgotten in his hand. The Imperial Suite wasn't just expensive. It was a statement. It was where celebrities stayed. Where tech moguls brought their families. Where old money went to remind themselves they were still relevant. It cost $12,000 per night. The kind of price that meant the guest was someone who mattered. Wait, Derek said, his voice suddenly oily with recovered professionalism. Mr. Sato, I apologize profusely for the misunderstanding. If you'll just give us a moment to ensure everything is perfect for your arrival. The keys are printing now, Lily said, her tone unchanged. Everything's ready. 2 bellhops materialized as if summoned, reaching for Hiroshi's worn suitcase. The same staff who'd walked past him minutes ago now competed to serve him. Hiroshi watched the transformation with a mixture of sadness and rage. No, he said quietly in Japanese. Thank you, but no. He looked at Lily. Really looked at her. She was young, mid-20s perhaps, with tired eyes that had seen enough hardship to understand its weight. Her uniform was spotless despite the café stains. Her posture was straight despite obvious exhaustion. And her eyes held something rare, genuine kindness without expectation of reward. How did you learn Japanese? Hiroshi asked. Lily glanced at the growing crowd, then back at him. It's a long story, sir. I wouldn't want to keep you. Please, Hiroshi said. I would like to know. Something in his voice made her pause. She nodded. My father was stationed in Tokyo when I was 8. We lived there until I was 14. I went to a local school, made friends, learned the language. It was... Her smile turned wistful. It was the happiest time of my life. I want to go back someday, maybe work as a translator. But university is expensive, so right now I'm here, saving what I can. Working in the café? Hiroshi asked softly. And the restaurant. Double shifts most days. She said it without self-pity, just fact. Hiroshi felt something shift in his chest. This young woman, working herself to exhaustion, dreaming of a future she could barely afford, had stopped everything to help him. Not because she knew who he was. Not because she expected reward. But because she'd heard him struggling and decided it mattered. He looked around the lobby, at Rachel, who'd dismissed him, at Derek, who'd suggested a motel, at the guests who'd laughed, at the staff who'd walked past like he was invisible. And he made a decision. May I ask your full name? Hiroshi said to Lily. Lily Gate, she answered, looking slightly confused by the formality. Hiroshi nodded slowly. Then he turned to Derek, switching to English, letting his voice carry across the marble floor. I need to tell you something important. My name is not actually Sato. Derek blinked, confusion replacing his recovered professionalism. I'm sorry, sir. My real name, Hiroshi said clearly, each word deliberate. Is Hiroshi Yamaha, founder and owner of Yamaha International, parent company of Grand Summit Resort Properties. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the fountain seemed to stop flowing. Derek's face went from confusion to recognition to horror in 3 seconds. Behind him, Rachel grabbed the desk edge to steady herself. A bellhop actually gasped. Several guests pulled out phones, frantically Googling the name. Hiroshi Yamaha, $52 billion empire. 64 luxury properties across 6 continents. A ghost who rarely appeared in public. Who valued privacy above all else. Who'd built his reputation on principles that were supposedly printed in every employee handbook. Sir, Derek breathed, all color gone from his face. I didn't. We had no idea. Hiroshi held up one hand and Derek fell silent instantly. I came here quietly, Hiroshi said, his voice carrying to every corner of the lobby. Because I wanted to see how my hotels treat guests when they think no one important is watching. He paused, letting the words sink in. Now I know. The shame on Derek's face was absolute. Around them, staff had frozen in various poses of terror. Guests watched like they were witnessing execution. Hiroshi turned to Lily, who looked stunned. Her hand still resting on the printed key cards. Miss Gate, you showed me kindness when everyone else showed me nothing. You helped me when it wasn't your job. When you gained nothing from it. When it would have been easier to walk past like everyone else. His voice softened. This is rare. This is valuable. Lily started, then stopped. Anyone would have. No, Hiroshi said firmly. Not anyone. Not today. Only you. He turned back to Derek, and now his voice went cold, sharp, every word a blade. You're fired. Effective immediately. Miss Hale as well. He gestured to Rachel, who'd started crying silently. I want the names of every staff member who walked past me, who ignored me, who treated me like I didn't matter. I will review their employment personally. Derek's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. No defense came. What could he say? That he was just doing his job? That Hiroshi looked poor? That class prejudice was industry standard? But sir, Derek finally managed. You suggested I try a motel, Hiroshi said quietly, because my jacket is old. Because my English has an accent. Because you decided in 30 seconds that I wasn't worth your time. How many others have you treated this way? How many guests have walked through these doors and been judged not by their humanity, but by their appearance? Silence answered him. Hiroshi turned back to Lily. Miss Gate, I'm creating a new position, Global Director of Guest Experience. Your job will be to ensure that every guest at every Yamaha property, regardless of appearance, language, or background, is treated with dignity. The salary is $90,000 per year, plus full benefits. Do you accept? Lily's mouth fell open. Tears spilled down her cheeks. What? I don't. Why? Because you greeted me in Japanese, Hiroshi said softly. One word. Sumimasen. That's all it took to see me as human. He stepped closer. I will also pay for your university education. Any program you choose. You want to be a translator? You'll be the best translator. I'll make certain of it. Lily pressed her hands to her mouth, shoulders shaking. Around them, the lobby remained frozen, everyone watching this impossible reversal of fortune. In my country, Hiroshi continued, we have a saying, one kind word can warm 3 winter months. Today, you gave me more than a kind word. You gave me back something I thought I'd lost. What? Lily whispered through her tears. Hope. He took her hand, gently. Then he addressed the entire lobby, his voice ringing clear. Starting today, every Yamaha property worldwide will have a new protocol. We will judge guests by respect, not appearance. Staff will be trained in cultural sensitivity and empathy. And anyone who fails to treat another human being with basic dignity will be removed immediately. He paused. This is not a request. This is policy. For a moment, nothing happened. Then slowly, someone began to clap. One person, then another, then the entire lobby erupted in applause. Lily was crying openly now. Hiroshi found his own eyes wet, 43 years of building an empire suddenly meaning something again. He turned to Lily and switched back to Japanese. Come, help me to my room. I'm very tired, and I have many calls to make. But first, I want to hear more about Tokyo. I want to hear about your dreams. Lily nodded, wiping her face. She came around the desk, picked up Hiroshi's worn suitcase herself, ignoring the bellhops, and walked beside him toward the elevator. As the doors closed, Hiroshi caught one last glimpse of the lobby. Derek standing frozen in disgrace, Rachel crying, guests whispering, staff looking at each other with dawning understanding. Thank you, he said softly to Lily. She looked up at him, eyes still shining. For what? For seeing me, Hiroshi said, when I was invisible. The elevator rose, carrying them up toward the imperial suite and a future that had just been rewritten by one person who decided that kindness mattered more than convenience. Sometimes the smallest act of compassion creates the biggest change. And sometimes being seen is worth more than being powerful. So here's the real question. Did this story move you? Did it make you feel something? Because if it did, if you felt that moment when Lily spoke Japanese and everything changed, then you owe it to yourself to subscribe. Don't be like the staff who walked past Hiroshi. Don't scroll past this moment without taking action. Smash that subscribe button right now for more powerful stories that remind you what humanity is supposed to look like. And if you don't subscribe after a story like this, well, we'll know exactly what kind of person you are. The choice is yours. Make the right one. Subscribe now.